Hey, I want to welcome everybody back to another episode of Grace, Grit, and Grounds. Grab yourself a cup of coffee and let's have a conversation. Mm. So I'm back out on the deck and I was just doing a morning devotion and just preparing my heart for the day to come. And as we're cycling through this season of Lent, as we're drawing closer to God, it struck me that sometimes our life can feel as foggy and almost insubstantial as what I see behind me here. And I think it's something we ought to talk about. As a culture, we don't grieve well. We don't know how to be sad. The last few days, I've been walking with a family through some times of grief and sadness, and also walking through this with our congregation. And I know some pastors may be able to clinically detach from that kind of thing, but I'm not one of those pastors. I tend to absorb the um, the grief and the sadness that those in my congregation feel, and and it's hard sometimes to hold all that in. And it occurred to me that as a culture, we just don't grieve well. And I've talked about this in the past. I've written 2 books, on grief in particular, another book on, my own journey through the grieving process. Um, and I've written these because I know that as a culture, we don't grieve well. We don't know how to be sad anymore. We seek comfort too quickly. And I came across a psalm that I thought sort of typified what we're experiencing with the fogginess and with the sadness. As we're marching through Lent, Lent is supposed to be a time that we pull away from uh, worldly things and seek to prepare our hearts for Good Friday and then Easter Sunday and that holiness. And sometimes I think that we avoid the uncomfortableness of giving up anything, and it's hard sometimes to do that. So I thought maybe we just take a moment to look at that, look at Psalm 13, and just take a moment this morning to walk through that. Psalm 13 is just 6 verses, and I'll read that to you really quickly. To the choir master, it's a psalm of David. How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I take counsel in my soul and have sorrow in my heart all the day? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me? Consider and answer me, O Lord my God. Light up my eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death. Lest my enemies say, I have prevailed over him. Lest my foes rejoice because I am shaken. But I have trusted in your steadfast love. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me. This is a really interesting psalm. It's a psalm of lament. And honestly, I could preach 2, maybe even 3 sermons out of this. I'm not going to, but I think that it's something that bears looking at in a quick way this morning, in the hopes that maybe all of us that watch this video will dive deeper into this psalm. As I mentioned, as a culture, we move past grief often, way too fast. We distract it, we try to fix it, we spiritualize it even, and that's actually even worse, I think. But in the Psalms, the psalmists don't rush past it, they embrace it. And I think that's something that Lent tells us to do. It's slow down long enough to feel what maybe we've been avoiding for a while. Psalm 13 asks, how long? That's a powerful question. In fact, in the first 2, 3 verses, it is just stating how long, multiple times. How long will you forget me? How long will you hide your face from me? This is not a psalm of polished faith, but it is a psalm of covenantal faith, and I mean that very specifically because of the way it's written. And it really starts right off in the beginning One of the verses in there that we often gloss over, we don't even look at, is the very beginning verse where it says, to a choir master, a psalm of David. We just look at that as a superscription and we jump right into the meat. But we have to we have to pause for a minute there because that's part of the scripture. It's part of the passage we're reading. David wrote this with the intent for it to be sung as a group in a lament to God as a congregation. And that right from the very beginning, right from the very before he even gets into the meat of the psalm, he's telling us that we are to grieve corporately together, not separately, but together. We don't do that well. So many times we will, when we're feeling sad or frustrated, we hunker down, we build the walls up, we pull in because we've been taught not to share the grief. Don't let your sadness out. Don't show weakness. And that's the wrong way to experience our Christian walk. I've said this multiple times on this channel that Christianity is not a solo sport. We are called to be in covenant with God together as a faith family. This is what he is talking about, this lament that he is giving. And listen to the words. How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? Can you hear the cry of the man's heart as he's calling out to God, as he's begging for an answer? He's also speaking into the covenant of God. He uses the name Yahweh. And he's speaking to the covenantal God that has been with him his whole life. He's begging for God to hear his cry. Have you been there? Do you know what that's like to cry out to God and not know if he's actually listening? I know that may be hard as Christians. We oftentimes try to over spiritualize things and we say, oh, of course God's always listening. And what about the poem of the two sets of footprints, where during the dark times there was only one said, where were you, God? And I'm not going to quote all the poem, but we over spiritualize this way too often. I think in reality, all of us go through these times where we wonder if God is even listening, if our prayers are even reaching past the roof. But lament and crying out these questions is not unbelief. It's bringing our pain to God instead of away from him. Lament is not complaining into the air. It's complaining towards God, and there's nothing wrong with that. That direction changes everything. When we start turning our thoughts towards God, whether they're pain-filled frustration or whether it's a song of celebration, we are turning our hearts and thoughts towards God, and it's exactly what he wants. It's exactly what the enemy doesn't want. I mean, listen to what he's saying. Will you forget me forever? How long will you hide from me? This is powerful. This is beyond what we would normally talk about when it comes to our Christian walk. I think it's honest, and that's something that I think we ought to talk about. I mean, David himself is writing from a place of spiritual emptiness. I think all of us have been there a time or two. He's requesting that God does something. He's saying, I still believe in you and who you are, but I'm questioning what's happening around me. Where are you in this? Psalm 13 moves from agony to what I would call anchored trust. Not because circumstances have changed, but because the prayer sort of recenters the psalmist's heart, David's heart. This is part of that spiritual discipline as we move through the lament into a place of holiness where we can feel the embrace of God around us. This is what Lent does. It trains us as we move towards Good Friday, not to skip over that. The saddest point in the history of mankind, in the history of the universe, was the day Jesus Christ died. The entire universe wept. Jesus himself cries out and says, my God, why have you forsaken me? This is a powerful moment of lament. Even Jesus had times where he was deeply sad. We've talked about that. My God, why have you forsaken me? When the Son of God can pray a lament at a moment of absolute brokenness, I think we can too. We are allowed to question. We are encouraged to question. We are inviting God into our grief, and that's exactly where he needs to be. But also, like I mentioned earlier, this is a corporate lament. We are supposed to do this with our brothers and sisters in Christ. I mean, if you look at the Hebrew in this passage, and I don't want to get too deep into the Hebrew, but this thing is just a theological gem that you could spend a week unpacking and probably not get completely all the information out of it. I will touch just a couple areas. The psalmist says this, consider and answer me, O Lord my God. When he says that, he's moving just from Lord, Yahweh, to Lord my God. Lord my God, my God. Light up my eyes. That's a Hebrew idiom. And we say light up my eyes, but what he's really saying is energize me. Fill me with your energy. Fill me with your spirit. Move me with your answer. Because without you, I will sleep I will sleep the sleep of death. Without your energizing force in me, I am as good as dead. That's what he's saying. It's a beautiful picture. And then he goes on to say in verse 4, lest my enemy prevail over me. Now, we read this and we think, oh, my enemy. That's like Jim, 3 cubicles over, that is constantly trying to one-up me and get a better promotion out of the company than me. And that's our enemy, right? That's not what he's saying here. And we have to remember this is in context. David is writing in a Middle Eastern ancient world context where when an enemy is prevailing over him, it's a sign of divine interaction. And that basically is saying that that enemy's God is stronger than my God because his God has prevailed over mine and allowed me to fall. The enemy here in this situation, it's almost like an image where the enemy is standing over David with a sword in his hand about to strike him down. And David saying, God, where are you? But this is so much like our spiritual walk. This is why I'm out here in the fog, because sometimes that's where we are. We're in this fog of war and we're fighting this battle against the enemy. And it does feel like he's got us on the ropes or on the ground, ready to succumb. And all we're doing is, God, where are you? The final part of that verse is, my enemies, my foes rejoice because I am shaken. Yeah, it's pretty powerful if you think about it. Verse 5, it says, but I have trusted in your steadfast love. Now, I have preached this. I have written about this in another book. I have taught this, and I have tried to embrace this as much as I can. There is one word, if there's one word in the Old Testament that just embodies every piece of theology and love and devotion that I have towards God, it's this word, steadfast love. It's one word in the Hebrew. The word is hesed. I know I may not be pronouncing it right. Any of the viewers that may be looking at this and complaining about my pronunciations, I apologize. But the word itself is powerful. It's so powerful that when the translators were trying to bring it into English, they had no word that meant what hesed meant. It's a covenantal, all-consuming love between God and us. It is the most powerful single statement, and the only way they've been able to translate it in English is the two words steadfast love. And we see this all throughout the Old Testament. But that steadfast love, that hesed love, that's when he says, I have trusted in your covenantal, all-consuming love towards me. I am trusting myself completely in you. It's beyond a trust fall. It's saying that there is nothing that I can do in this situation. I know it, and I'm just going to close my eyes, drop my weapons, lean back into your arms, and say, Lord, you have this. That's that image that he's saying there. He says, my heart shall rejoice in your salvation. Now, I don't want to get over spiritual in this. And I don't know if this psalm is a messianic psalm. I don't think it is. I think it's more of just a lament. But that word salvation in Hebrew is Yeshua. And for those of you that are biblical scholars, you probably recognize right away that Yeshua is the Hebrew name for Jesus. And I find it interesting that David, even here in Psalm 13, is saying that my heart shall rejoice in your Jesus, your Yeshua, your salvation. It's a it's an amazing picture. When I was reading that this morning, my heart started to race as I was thinking about this. And he ends this. He says, I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me. So the psalmist starts off saying, will you remember me? Will you continue to hide your face from me? That word hide your face from me in the Hebrew, it brings up this idea of like curse language from Deuteronomy. Like, will you refuse to look at me? Are you ashamed of me? Are you embarrassed of me? Do you not want me in your presence? Have you banished me from your place? He says that in the beginning of the psalm. At the end of the psalm, he says, I will sing to you because you have dealt bountifully with me. I'm going to rest in your salvation. I'm going to rest in your covenantal, all-consuming love. Do you see the shift that's happened in just those 6 verses? He was able to walk through his sadness and his grief, and he ends it knowing that God has his back. That's pretty powerful. It's not abstract. It's timely, it's focused, and it's right where we are. It's not fake positivity. I think it's grounded reality in Scripture. I've had times in my life where I have wondered where God was, and I've prayed out loud, God, where are you? Why am I going through this? And I'll tell you, he's never failed to show up. He may not show up on my timeline. It may take days afterwards for me to understand fully what's going on, but he always answers. He has always been there for me. My God, why have you forsaken me? Jesus said. And the psalmist here answers, I'm going to rest in your love. I'm going to rest in your salvation because you've always dealt bountifully with me. I don't know where you're at this morning, and I don't know where you're at in your journey through Lent, but I would encourage you to lean into sadness. Don't run from it. Invite others into this. This psalm was meant to be sung in a church setting as we grieve together, as we are sad together. Call a friend, call a pastor, reach out to somebody that you're connected to. Share your grief. If you can't share the grief, you'll never really fully get past it. You have to unburden yourself. Jesus says, cast your cares on me, for I care for you. He wants us to share our burdens, not just with him, but with those that are walking with us in faith as a faith family. Like I said, I don't know where you're at this morning. I don't know where direction you're going, but I want to encourage you as you're moving through Lent towards Good Friday, towards Easter Sunday, to lean into the grief, invite God into your sadness, and allow him to answer you. Until we meet again, I want to encourage you with the simple phrase I use all the time, grace builds what grit sustains. Until we see each other again, keep the coffee hot and the conversation flowing.